Why we will not have off the shelf. We will instead have we'll wait until August. Sorry, I got distracted reading a chat. Yep, I'll share the slides when we send out the link to the recording. Sorry, I'm gonna ignore the chat now so I can focus on everyone. Someone else is watching the chat though and will respond. So let me let you know about our August off the shelf. This is going to be, you may recognize Scott Christopher. He is going to be our guest presenter in August, and he is going to talk about levity in the workplace. He is, you may recognize him from a lot of different films and TV shows, Singles Ward, Best 2 Years, Granite Flats, but he also has a master's in HR management. And so he's going to talk about levity. I'm excited to see that. So that will be in August. All right, so let's talk about, let's get started. This is me. I'm Tara Connolly, and I am so excited that I am here today. And I just want to give you just a quick background on me. I've worked for the state for 27 years. And a couple of years ago, I went back to school and I got my master's in management and leadership. And I thought, what can I do with this? I really want to do something with this. And so I changed jobs and I came to DHRM. I've been here about 9 months and I absolutely love it. So I am a specialist with the DHRM Leadership and Organizational Development team. So this is what we're going to talk about this morning. We are going to discuss this, the background behind why we're having quarterly reviews. How do you prepare for them? How do you reduce rater bias? And how do you engage your employees? Now, there will be a lot of notes on the slides that will be, this is what you can have your employees do. Encourage your employees to do this because we want them engaged in their own performance plan. So there's going to be some notes on there about how you can encourage that involvement. We want them taking accountability and engaging in that so that they can have a better performance plan, as well as we recognize you are pretty busy as supervisors and managers and leaders. And so we want to find ways also to reduce your workload. All right. So let's jump in the background. I think we're all fully aware of this new focus that has come out with HB 104 from 2022. This is as of July 1, which looking at my calendar, it's 28. So 2.5 days before this is all effective. So by Saturday, the law requires that you have performance plans in place with both behavioral expectations and performance standards and goals. So remember, behavioral expectations are the how somebody does their job. So provide good customer service, they're professional, they're a good team player, those types of things. But they've got to be a lot more specific than that. And if you've attended the A.P.P.L.E training, you've gotten a lot of that. Another requirement of HB 104 is the quarterly evaluations and how that's kind of where the focus is now. You've got your performance plans going, or we'll have it in the next couple of days. And then it's time to start preparing for those quarterly evaluations. Now, I recognize that there is a lot of, I don't know if fear is the right word, but worry and concern about the subjectivity, because now your performance evaluation is going to be tied to your employees' pay. And that can be worrying. And so a couple of things I want you to know. You do not need to focus on pay. This is really, that should be handled at an executive director level, a finance director level. And so as you are working with your employees, really focus on their performance and performance evaluations. And that's really where you're going to be able to encourage and motivate. And then the pay piece will take care of itself by those who are going to, move it around and decide who gets it from there. So this is a review for those of you that have been to the A.P.P.L.E training from April to June, or those of you that have been in Watch the March Off the Shelf. So this is the big change, and most people are worried about this because it does require this subjectivity. Behavioral expectations can be very subjective because, like performance evaluation or performance standards, they do have to be job related. They do need to be specific. They need to be in the employee's control, but they have to be observable. They're really not the measurable things. They're not the number of things, quality, quantity, timeliness. This is really observable behavior. And that brings the worry of the subjectivity. Now, that can be scary, but remember, you are the supervisor and your job is to sometimes be subjective. And so how can you do that and be fair? And that's what we're really going to focus on today as we talk about reducing rate or bias, preparing for the evaluations. How can you be fair? And so let's start talking. Let's start talking about you've prepared, you've finished your performance plans, or you will get those in place by, I keep looking at my calendar, 2.5 days. And so now, how do you prepare? A lot of this is going to be, well, some of this will be a just refresh for you. A lot of this you already know. So the first part is documentation. It's really important that you document situations when they occur. So if you are monitoring, or not if, when you are monitoring your employees' performance, you would just want to take some quick notes. And you want to write just a paragraph or something, just a quick story. Now, when I say story, I don't mean like a big, long fairy tale book. It can just be a couple bullet points or, you know, a quick paragraph, but something to describe the situation, what happened, what was the impact, what did you do, what did the employee do, and then that will help you when you are ready for your quarterly evaluation to be able to differentiate between those that are underperforming and those that are higher performing. Kelly Beamer, we do have an ASL interpreter. It's Teresa. Sorry, I'm interrupting because I just saw it. It's Teresa, but go get Clay or Teresa in the back. It should be with UIP. That's who's scheduled for this. Okay, sorry. Just want to make sure we have access for everybody. All right, so one way that you can get your employees engaged in this is actually have them send you something, or actually they can even upload it into UPM itself. If they happen to get a kudos, a thank you, something praise, that type of stuff they can send to you, or they can put it into, upload it into UPM itself, which is actually would kind of help a little bit because then you're not having to do that. Now, I'm going to give you a couple of caveats. And on this one, I want you to think about that just because an employee gets praise notes and thank you notes and all of that kind of stuff doesn't necessarily mean that they're a high performer. And just because they don't have thank you notes, it doesn't mean that they're a low performer. So this is just one piece that you can use to determine and track your research, figure out your research, right? So think about, is it possible that they have, maybe they're working on a project that has a negative connotation, and so people aren't really that excited to give kudos. Maybe the person who gets a lot of kudos works in a position where they're interacting with others and solving problems a lot, and so they get a lot of the kudos. So this is only one piece of the puzzle. So don't just take it and say, yep, that's absolutely. And I do want to point out documentation is for underperformance and for exceptional performance as well. These are things that are going to help you as you get ready for that quarterly evaluation. So the next thing you can do is over the next quarter and continuing and beyond, you want to track your employees' assignments, and you want to be able to set the criteria in advance. So when things are being assigned to them, let them know what it is that they're going to be required to report back to you. A few years ago, I had the opportunity, got this big promotion. I was so excited. And at that time I was cornered in the break room by the deputy director. And he said, I just want you to know, in 6 months, I'm going to ask for this, 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 and this. And I was like, wow, okay. So I knew immediately that it was what I needed to start tracking, what I needed to have reported, all of that kind of stuff. So it's really important. This helps people stay on track. And then when the project is over, you can have group evaluations as well. And these evaluations can be uploaded into UPM. So group evaluations, remember, that's not looking at how does the person do, but how did the project go? What process was used? Was it successful in the end? So these people are not evaluating. You're not saying, hey, John did this and I didn't like it, or whatever it might be. We're really looking at how did the project go. Now, research shows that there's actually a 14% increase in performance when the entire work process is evaluated by everyone involved in it. So 14% is pretty high, and that would be great to be able to have. The other thing is you can ask your employee, hey, what strengths did you use on that project? That can kind of help hone your idea of, yeah, those strengths you think you have, I agree, or those strengths you think you have, I don't agree. And so that can also help you in your conversations with them and in your coaching that you're doing in these quarterly evaluations. The other thing, another caveat to think about, is the piece of the puzzle is it's just one piece of it, right? So if someone has a project that is maybe high profile, or maybe it's super intensive, or maybe it is something that is a stretch goal for them, you take all of those things into consideration as you're evaluating and using those evaluations to determine your performance evaluations. Now, before I move on, I've seen several pop-ups in the chat. And so I'm going to just address this really quickly. The law requires, HB 104, the law requires July 1st. And that's all I'm going to be able to tell you is the law says July 1st. And from there, I can't give you anything other than to just say, yep, the law requires July 1st for performance plans to be implemented, for your yearly performance evaluation or performance training that supervisors you need to take. All of that needs to be in place by July 1st. What your agencies have done, some have extended that date, but the law only says July 1st. So I can't really give you any other specifics than that. Okay, so I would encourage you to talk with your agency to see if they have an extension of some sort. All right. Sorry, I just wanted to go back so that you're not, pulling that around in your head this whole time. All right, so let's talk about check-ins. So this is, you might be wondering, why is there an image of a tooth on this screen? And it's not just because my brother is a dentist, but it's because I want you to think about check-ins with your employees like your teeth. Now, we all know we should be brushing and flossing every single day, right? But what happens if you say, hey, you know what, I'm not going to brush and floss because 6 months from now, my dentist is going to clean my teeth. So what's the point? And so then over 6 months, it festers, and you end up with a root canal at that 6 months. So it's the same concept. We don't want to wait till the quarterly evaluation to have a check-in with your employee. Things can fester. And I'm not saying your employees are, festering, but situations can fester, and misunderstandings, or maybe they're on the wrong track, or they have been, they need a little bit of course correction, or maybe the priorities they're working on are not the exact priorities. So having those check-ins. These frequent check-ins, actually, there's a lot of data that shows that having monthly check-ins, and even more often than that, if you can, but monthly check-ins is really the sweet spot for it, especially when it comes to teleworking and those where we may not have that immediate interaction with our employees at all times. This having this frequent check-in helps people understand that you are aware of them, you're aware of their work product, and that you care for them and want to encourage and motivate them as well. So having those and checking in is a great idea. Now, the other thing is encourage employees to put those meetings on your calendars. You don't have to schedule them, but they can. And so that allows you, especially because employees a lot of the times are a little bit more excited maybe, or interested in getting feedback and in hearing from their supervisor, where as supervisors, sometimes we're like, ugh, I have so much I have to do. I don't want to put in this monthly check-in. Now, a check-in, when I say this, 5 minutes. It really can be very simple. So what are you going to ask in these check-ins? I've listed a whole bunch of questions there. And this is just a time for you to say, hey, how are things going? What are you doing? How are your strengths? What's going on with your behavioral expectations? How is this happening? What can we do to make these types of meetings better? You are talking to them about ways that they can improve, but also just doing a check-in like, hey, how's it going? How's your sister? How's your brother? What's happening with that project? You're building that relationship of trust. And that's super important in a relationship with a supervisor and their employee. So when I say supervisor, I mean anyone that supervises at least one person. So that can be supervisor, manager, director, leader, whatever term you want to use. All right, so having those check-ins really help people have an indication of where they stand at all times. And so there's not a lot of questions. You know, have you ever had, hopefully not, but I'm going to guess the majority of us have the experience where our supervisor will tell us at the end of the year, like June 25th, and say, you know, yeah, we have to do an evaluation. And if I haven't told you, you would know by now if you were unsuccessful, right? Like that's not good. You want to be able to have those conversations and provide coaching and direction as you continue. All right, so those are the check-ins. Now, one thing I want to cover before we start talking about rate or bias is, because like I said, we've been doing those A.P.P.L.E trainings since, well, we really started the Blitz the end of March, and we've been training Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, every week, every month for the last 3 or so months. And then we're going to shift and change it to a different topic in July. But we've been talking about these performance evaluations and performance plans, and how do you put those together? And we've heard a lot of, I feel guilty. I feel guilty having to tell my team that, or tell employees that they're unsuccessful, because I know that's going to impact their pay. Or there's the fear and the worry that somebody may get upset and they might, you know, blow up. And especially now, the majority of you have switched to AX, which, you know, feels a reduction in that career service benefit and protection. And so this is really a worrisome time. So I've given you this process on here to kind of help you prepare a little bit and work through that guilt and that fear and that worry so that you are as most prepared as you can be. This is what I want you to do is get a group together, not more than 12 people, but people who are all at your same level of supervision, peers of yours. And you will, within 5 weeks, be able to do this process. The first week, you are going to just meet, and it can be done over, you know, Google Meet or something, and just say, all right, let's brainstorm all of the worries we have, and just let people discuss about, here's my fears, here's what, you know, I'm struggling with this, and this is, you know, all that kind of stuff. You don't have to come up with solutions in that first meeting, because really we want people to go back and think about it, consider it, talk with others, all of that kind of stuff, and then come back the next week and say, okay, here's what I've researched. Here's what I've found in that solution. Here's what I'm going to do when that comes up, and have that exchange and that sharing of ideas with people that you know and trust, and that are experiencing the same thing as you in your office and in your departments. And then week 3, role play. And I know people hate role plays, but they're really good. They really are. I want you to think about it like the Utah Jazz, right? If they never practice, they're never going to win. Wait, maybe I shouldn't say it that way. They better win because they practice hard. But practicing is what increases your skills. Practicing increases your confidence and your knowledge. It helps you know this is what I can say in this circumstance, or this is what I shouldn't say, or this is where I'm getting hung up. Role playing is really, really beneficial. So I encourage you to do the role play. And then in week 4, conduct the actual evaluation using what you've learned. And week 5, come back with the whole group and say, oof, this is what happened, or wow, this is what happened because of this, and discuss things and how can I get better at this? Because quarterly evaluations are going to continue. They're in the law, they're not going away. We will be doing these over and over and over. So the first time may feel like, oof, but recognize this is going to be a continual thing, and you want to build up the skills that you need. Now, a lot of you already have these skills, but if you're struggling and worried about it, this is one way to work through it. All right, so let's talk about rater bias. Our job as supervisors, your job as supervisors, is to evaluate. It is to make a judgment, and it a lot of times is subjective. And that can be really difficult because this is a human, right? Our employees are humans. We sometimes lose track of that when we get frustrated, but everyone's a human, and it's difficult to make that judgment of a person and their behaviors and their work product and still not get frustrated or not let your bias take over. And so because of that, I want you to think about ways you can reduce this bias. Now, I didn't eliminate the bias because I feel like as humans, we are imperfect. And so chances are we may not be able to eliminate it completely, but we can definitely take steps to drastically reduce it. So here's something I found, and this was shocking to me. There was a study that was done by 3 researchers in the year 2000, and it was published in, well, it was published in the year 2000 in Applied Psychology journal. What they did is they studied 4,500 managers nationwide, and they did 360 reviews. And if you're not familiar with 360s, they survey people who are above, people who are the same level, and people who are subordinates. And they have them, you know, how does my manager do this? Or how does this person do this? And all of that kind of stuff. What they found was that 62% of the variance in the rating was due to the individual rater and their own personality, you know, their quirks and their peculiarities or whatever it might be. And actual performance of the person was only 21% of the rating. Only 21%. That's huge if you start thinking about that, because again, that bias is impacting a very, very large portion. So this is their quote from the journal. And really, truly, I just want you to, wow, okay? So these ratings actually reveal more about the rater than they do about the ratee. So how do we work through that? How do we move forward? How are we making this, how are we reducing our rater bias? Well, let's talk about this, the fundamental attribution error. And a fundamental attribution error is, it's a concept where you or somebody underestimates the situational issues and overinflates the person's personality, their disposition, whatever it might be. So let me give you an example. This is a perfect example because it happened this morning. On my drive every day, I have to go on a road that is 3 lanes on each side, and I have to turn left. And I always hope for the green left turn signal because there's always accidents in that intersection. Happened today right after I went through, because you get the yellow turn and then everyone's trying to hurry and get through it. Well, anytime I am driving and there's a car in front of me, and the light, we only get the yellow turn arrow, I get so frustrated. And I think, man, did they not know? Why didn't they pull forward and hit that sensor? I'm assuming there's a sensor. Someone from UDOT tell me, do roads have sensors like that? Do traffic lights have sensors? I want to know. But in my head, yes, Andrea just said yes.
Yes, normally we actually use radar sensors, which are not in the pavement, but yes, there's pretty much always sensors.
Oh, I love it. Thank you. See, look, Andrea, you just made my day. Okay, so yeah, so there's like the sensor, right? And I think, why didn't they pull forward far enough to hit that sensor or to be recognized by the sensor? They just must not care about us. They must not know that, you know, this is such a dangerous intersection, or that I'm, you know, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, Craig. Yeah, confirmation bias, right? Now, so, but when I'm the first car in the intersection and I get the yellow turn arrow and it doesn't turn green for me, automatically it's, man, there's something wrong with the system. Why didn't that recognize me? So I'm using that fundamental attribution error. I am blaming the person and their personality, but when it comes to me, I'm looking at my own decisions and my own situation, my own the situation that I have found myself, right? So a couple ways to move past this. Don't confuse your made up stories with facts. And how do you not tell yourself that story? We all tell ourselves stories all the time. So how do you, man, okay, what can you do? So ask yourself, why would a decent person do this? You know, I think that a lot of times we think the worst of people, but think, why would a decent person not pull all the way forward to get the sensor to go off? And then ask yourself why, give yourself 2 reasons. Come up with 2 reasons why. So is this person really just a crappy driver? Or is it possible maybe the second reason is, yeah, or are they just too busy playing with their phone? Maybe they just didn't know, but let's talk about what a decent person is. So maybe it is a system problem. Maybe the person just got in a fight with their spouse and they're driving and they're just not totally focused and they're overwhelmed. Or I remember when my dad died, I was driving down the road and I was sobbing and thinking, and I looked around and no one else was crying. And I thought, how dare these people not cry? Don't they know my dad just died? Right? It's that concept of overinflating the personality quirks of other people. So coming up with that. So let me give you a work example. When someone is constantly late, do you say to yourself, man, they just don't care about their job. They're so lazy. They're so unmotivated. Obviously, there's a problem here I've got to address because they're late. When you are late, do you have a good reason? Maybe you had to stop and get coffee. Maybe there was a snowstorm. Maybe there was a traffic accident. Maybe you slept in. Maybe you were just tired. Maybe you just were done with work for the day and weren't sure you wanted to come in or not. So come up with, what are your 2 ideas about why a decent person would do this? And doing that can help you see it more clearly, can focus more on the facts rather than just on your the stories that you tell yourself. All right. So as we do some rater bias, as we do our evaluations, there's a few things that you can do right before you do the evaluation. So I want you to think about, change your mindset, shift it from focusing on what you think of the employee to what would you do with the employee. So ask yourself these 4 questions. Given what I know of this person's performance, I would always want them on my team. So 1 to 5 score. And this measures how well they work with others and how well they fit in the team, and measures a lot of the behavioral expectations as well. So given what I know of their performance, I always want them on my team, 1 to 5. Number 2, I would send them to more training, or maybe they provide some other resources because of underperformance. So it helps as you are thinking about, man, these are some problems that may harm things in the future, may harm the customer, the mission, our team. So yeah, I'm going to have to send them somewhere for more training or for more assistance on that. Number 3, this person's ready for a promotion today. So a promotion doesn't necessarily mean moving into a supervisory role. It can mean taking on more job responsibilities, moving from like a level 1 to a level 2 in something. And that is a great way to just know what their potential is, and are they working towards that. And then number 4, if it were my money, I would award them the highest possible compensation. This will help you with your overall performance and the value that that person brings to the organization. Now, I've told you before, and I'll tell you again, compensation is really something that should be handled at an executive level, at a finance director level. But in this circumstance, I'm just trying to get you to think about the value that somebody brings to your team. And if you had the opportunity, would you or would you not? But again, your focus truly the rest of the time is on their performance. All right, so focusing on what you would do rather than what you think of an employee drastically reduces your rate or bias, okay? All right, so let me click on the next slide here. And then as you are preparing your evaluation, ask yourself a few questions. Number 1, have I been clear about what work I expected? So remember, we talked in the beginning about that when you assign a project, when you assign something to your employee, you're saying, hey, this is what I expect out of this. These are the reports I want to get. These are the deliverables. This is your role. This is the support that you need, all of that kind of stuff. And having that communication with them will help and guide them on the time. If you have not given them that, it's really, their performance isn't necessarily their fault, if that makes sense, right? We want to be giving them all the detail that we possibly can to help them be successful. The second question is, are my expectations reasonable? So is this assignment something similar to what they've done in the past? Is it a stretch assignment that actually is a lot more difficult than something they've done? Do they need more support in order to accomplish it? Have you made yourself available to them? A lot of times when our employees are working on projects and it gets to that point where nothing is happening and they can't move things forward, they might come to you and say, hey, I just need someone at a higher level to push this through. And so when they come to you with that, are you following through? Are you pushing it through? So, and if not, are your expectations reasonable that then they would still accomplish it? So think about all of those things as you're creating that. And then what do I know to be true about this employee? A lot of times when we get upset with people, we focus on that one personality trait or that one thing that they're doing that is super frustrating. But think of them as a whole person. Yesterday in a training, somebody said to me, I like to think of people as Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and treat everybody as if I'm talking to him. And I thought, oh, that's a fun idea, you know, treating people like a whole person and recognizing that this personality quirk or how they do this, or, you know, their lack of whatever it might be, that's one piece. So what do I know to be true about them? Are they supportive? Do they help the team players? Do they have, are they professional? All of the various things that are the more positive things. These are the things that I know to be true about this person. And that can kind of help you back off on some of the bias that you may have as you're doing the evaluation. The next thing is, am I managing to results? So this is really key. Now, when I say this, let me say it this way. A lot of times we focus on, hey, you've got to do it exactly the way I say you do it. And that's micromanaging. So instead of micromanaging, focus on managing to the result. Allow the person to do the process they need to, as long as the end result is okay. Now, I'm not talking about not following policies or not following laws or whatever it might be, or procedures, things that are put into place. But I'm just saying, what are the things you may have an idea of, this is how it works. But if the end result is the same and they haven't violated processes and policies and procedures, then it's okay, right? Let's manage towards the result. Let's focus on the outcome that the employee provides to us and to the agency and to our teams, rather than, are you using Google Docs for that, or did you use Microsoft Word? That's the kind of stuff I'm talking about, is use that opportunity to provide them with the autonomy and that ability to make their own choices and focus on the results. All right, and then, let's talk about proximity bias. Oh my goodness, am I holding everybody the same standard? Start thinking about, do you treat men differently, women differently, people of color differently, people with disabilities differently? People who are different ages, do you treat them differently? All of those types of things where you might have a bias. But the one that I think that we see a lot of is proximity bias. And this is basically where you have a bias towards people who are nearby you. So if we have teams that are teleworkers, or maybe we telework, those people, we actually, the research shows that we end up getting a bias thinking that they're not as hard workers, or they're not really doing their job as well as those who are in the office that you're seeing every single day. So that proximity bias can be really difficult and scary when you're doing your evaluation, because you could potentially rate someone lower than what they actually would receive if they were in the office with you. So think about that type of stuff. Are you giving more preference to people who are coming in person? Do you think, okay, well, they're just right outside my door, or their cubicles down the hallway, or whatever it might be, so I'm just going to run over and ask them and give them this project and this assignment? So recognize that if you're doing that, there's a little bit of bias that's happening. So I want to encourage you to think about your proximity bias and what's happening there for you. We have the benefit now of doing these quarterly evaluations. And like I said, check-in meetings is encouraged, not a requirement, but that's encouraged. And so that will also help you with your with proximity bias. If you're having regular check-ins, I had somebody yesterday in a training I gave yesterday, somebody said that they once a week schedule 15 minutes, just a quick meeting with every employee, and say they're just doing water cooler talk. Like, hey, what'd you think of the game? Or what's going on? Or did you try that new recipe you were talking about? Or whatever it might be. So it's more just like the informal stuff. And I thought, oh, that's an idea. So those types of things you can do to overcome that proximity bias. All right. And are you providing that concerns, criticisms? Are you giving that in actionable feedback? If you are waiting for this to fester like a root canal and just wait till the quarterly evaluation, then yeah, you're not being able to coach them and to provide guidance. So make sure that when you are giving that type of feedback, make sure that it is actionable, that they know what they can move forward on. The other thing I'm going to tell you, another way to reduce rater bias is this second level rater. And a lot of agencies have put this into place in their policies. You will see that. And even if your agency doesn't have it in their policy, you can still put this together. It's basically like a second set of eyes to say, all right, these are, before I give my ratings out to my employees, I am going to have someone else look over them and make sure that I'm not missing anything. And so a lot of agencies are saying, yeah, we're going to have the managers of all of the supervisors that report to the manager will review all of the employees for those supervisors, review those performance evaluations before they're given, and say, yep, that sounds good to me. You could put together a group. You could, I don't want to volunteer HR, but again, HR might be a good resource for you to reach out to say, hey, how can we put this together in a beneficial way? So having that second level review takes some of that subjectivity away, and it also helps you be able to have, yeah, someone has my back and I have reviewed it with someone else, and okay, I feel good about this response. Okay, so now we're going to conduct the quarterly evaluation. Now, every agency is put in just a little bit differently because there is agency autonomy, as we have learned earlier, as I was talking about the July 1st deadline. Some agencies have a little bit of different ways that they're implementing it. But remember, your agency may or may not require that you give an actual rating every quarter, or that might be only once a year. So look at your policy, contact your agency to find out what is going to be required of you. So I'm going to give you this quick action plan, and this is something that you can put into place and tweak it as you need to. So you're ready to have your quarterly evaluation meeting. So 3 days beforehand, have your employees send you a quick email with, here's what's going on. Here's what I'm working on. These are the efforts I've been making. These are challenges, whatever it might be. Just a couple bullet points. Again, this doesn't have to be anything formal or written in APA format or anything like that. This is just an idea so that you know what you're going to be discussing and so that they know what they're going to be discussing. One thing you can also do is say, give me a self-assessment of your rating. If your agency has a 1 to 3 scale, so unsuccessful, successful, and exceptional, how do you measure on that? Where do you think you are? Are you a 1? Are you a 2? Are you a 3? Have them tell you. Now, again, that's not required, but it's an idea that you can use because that starts as like a talking point for you. Lets you know kind of where the employee is in their thought process. And one thing you can do is encourage employees to set tasks or meetings for the 3 days in advance so that you don't have to track it. You just say, okay, put this on your calendar 3 days before every one of our quarterly meetings. I want you to send me this report. And then the day before the meeting, you as a supervisor can respond back to the employee with your impressions on the report. So it can be, yeah, okay, I'm going to compare these against what you did last year. I'm going to evaluate it. I'm going to approve or suggest things that can be done better. But again, a couple quick bullet points, nothing huge and onerous, because we recognize that not only are you supervising and doing performance management, but many of you, I would say most of you, are actually providing the work product as well. You are an individual contributor on your team. And so your workload's pretty high. So do things that are in a way that will not cause you excess burden, but will make it easier for you. So the other thing you can do at this point is you can say, yep, I agree with that rating if they gave you a self-assessment rating, or you can say, let's talk more about it in the meeting. Now, why would we want to do this in advance? Have you ever been called into your supervisor's office or have your supervisor walk by and they say, hey, when you get a second, come in and talk to me? Ugh, I hate that feeling. So knowing things in advance, so there's not a big surprise when you get into your evaluation meeting, that can help calm the waters and can prepare you and the employee both for the actual evaluation meeting. So in the meeting, this is your opportunity to coach your employee. You can help them understand what needs improvement, understand what they're doing well, talking about the decisions that they've made. You're cultivating their relationship with them. You're doing all these things that are helping them along the way to become a better employee. And that's really the focus of being a supervisor, is helping our employees become better. So this opportunity to be able to talk to them. And at this point, you can talk about that self-evaluation and say, you know, this is what I have seen, and can you tell me, why did you rate yourself that way? So give why you would rate them differently. Ask them, why are you rating yourself that way? And then ultimately, you're still the supervisor and you make the final decision. That subjectivity on that is your job. And so you can say, thank you for your feedback. Thank you for giving me what you feel your rating is. And, you know, I'm going to use the rating that I came up with because of the reasons I stated, or however you want to phrase that to them. But by doing this, you're helping your employee know really clearly where they are at all times. It helps them know how to improve in both their performance standards and their behavioral expectations as well. And it can help you minimize that proximity bias because you're having that interaction with them more frequently. So, Tracy, what are they rating themselves on? Work product or improvement? Just your normal quarterly rating. What would you performance rating on everything, right? Just like you would be doing the rating, but just ask them, where do you think you are? Are you successful, highly successful, that type of thing. All right. Sorry, sometimes I see the chat, sometimes I don't, but there are people watching them and responding. So, okay. So now let's talk about how you can communicate within the evaluation. Man, you know what? Our jobs as supervisors are so hard. They really are. And it's great to find, what is my positive intent? I really want to encourage my employees. I want them to grow. I want them to get better. So these evaluations are an opportunity to help build the relationship, to help your employees grow, to help them get better. And so you've got to have that positive intent at the beginning. And describe your observations. So specifically, I want to give you an example of this. And I've given this example several times, but it's one of my favorites to talk about what not to do. Years ago, I got pulled into my supervisor's office because I was in trouble. And my supervisor said to me, I just want to tell you I've gotten a complaint, and the complaint is that you were negative. And I said, okay, what did I do? Well, I don't know. Just the complaint is that you were just really negative yesterday. Okay, well, can you tell me who it was or circumstance surrounding it? No, I can't give you anything. Just know that you're negative and you need to be better. Well, I can't do anything with that feedback. I don't know the specifics around it. And so make sure when you are talking to your employees, you're giving them, hey, this is what happens. So things like when we're talking about the impact, instead of just saying, wow, you've been really rude in staff meeting, or you've been really short in staff meeting, and it's frustrating. Be more specific. I noticed in staff meeting that anytime anybody was trying to come up with their ideas and their solutions, you would scoff and you would sigh, you would roll your eyes, you would interrupt. Those types of things actually impacted the team and made it so people weren't willing to provide their brainstorms and their ideas. And it's made it so we possibly missed out on some ideas of how to solve this problem. So that's a lot better than just saying you were rude. So give them a lot more detail. Again, if you've got this all written up from later or from earlier, as you've been documenting, you can have all of that kind of stuff, right? And so that will be at your fingertips to help. You want the person to be able to respond, because there's this thing called the Rashomon effect. I don't know if you've heard of this, but I know you've maybe don't know it by the name, by the title, but it is basically the thought that no two people see the same situation exactly the same, right? It is difficult because everyone uses their own perceptions and their own experiences as they process situations. So this Rashomon effect, that's alive and well. And so you want to allow your employees to provide their side. What are the things that they need to do? And then determine some next steps of how you move forward for the next quarter. All right, UPM. Now, I've heard this rumor that UPM is going to be updated by July 1. If you've heard that, that is a rumor. That is not true. UPM is not changing, at least right now. They did award a contract, and that's coming in the future, but not in the next 2 days. So this is what you can do in UPM. It still has all the same functionality, but there's been an additional piece to use. I'm going to go over this quickly because there is a video you can watch, and I'm going to show you where that video is in just a second, or just a couple minutes here. But I just want to show you how you can track your quarterly evaluations in UPM. So the first one is this thing called a AAA. And a AAA means agreements, authorizations, and acknowledgements. It's basically the title of a task. And so if you set this up, it will send an email to your employee every quarter to go in and acknowledge that they've had a quarterly review. And it requires you to also go in and say, yep, we did our quarterly evaluation. This will allow you to track that. Now, there are some disadvantages to this. It does have to be set up through HR. So work with your HR field office if you want to use AAAs to get those set up between now and your first quarterly evaluation. And the other thing is if the employee doesn't acknowledge it, it just goes away. It goes to read only, and then you can't change it. So I mean, that's probably the best option, but there are a few other options with some positives and negatives as well. The next one is attachments. Just like I talked about, employees can upload things in there to help you in the process throughout the quarter, throughout the performance year. But those attachments are things you can access as well. So if you want to upload a document once a quarter, I know there are several agencies that have created some Google Sheets where they're tracking different things. They have all their things are populating into it from, the data warehouse and all that kind of stuff. They're gathering all this detail so that then what they'll do is they'll either upload that document once a quarter, or they can actually put in the URL of the Google Doc or the Google Sheet or whatever it might be. And then anytime changes are made to that document, it will still take you to the correct and most current version. So that's a really cool thing about it too. The difficulty is there's no tracking. There's nothing to say, yeah, that upload was for this quarter, or, it's going to be some manual going back in and saying, yeah, I did do all my quarterly evaluations. The other thing you can use is performance notes, especially those of us who have worked in agencies that require a lot of narrations and notes and keeping track of things. This is something you're probably familiar with. You can create notes and say, I had this quarterly evaluation. This is all this information in here. It's just a running narrative. So again, there's no way to track and distinguish between a normal note and a quarterly evaluation note. So there are some negatives surrounding that too, but those are the 3 ways you can track your quarterly evaluations. All right, do not leave me. I want to just go over a couple last things with you, just as we're getting to the end of this. We do have some additional resources, and I'll send out a copy of this slide deck with the, well, I'm not sending it out. Shane's going to send out a copy of this slide deck with the YouTube link once this is ready to be posted on YouTube as well. So you'll be able to have this direct URL. But this URL is a state Utah agency guide for how are we implementing HB 104. And there's a resources tab that has all this information on here. Links to your yearly performance training, best practices about how you can create performance plans and measure things. And how do you measure things when it's difficult to measure, when someone doesn't do something that their job isn't really measurable, if that makes sense. And so all this stuff is on there, as well as this video for how do you use quarterly evaluations in UPM. That is on there. And then there's the off-the-shelf playlist. So all of these that have been related to performance management, we've created a specific playlist so you can go to those and review them. And then there's the A.P.P.L.E training. Oh my goodness, sign up for the A.P.P.L.E training. We do these every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays from now until the end of the year. And every quarter we change our topic. So we just are finishing up. Tomorrow's our last one about writing performance plans. And then starting July 1st, now it's going to be about difficult conversations, having these conversations about how do we, when we're talking to employees and they're upset, how do we process that? How do we improve our communications with our employees? So that's another way to help you prepare for your quarterly evaluation. The training is open only to supervisors. So I'm sorry for those of you that are not supervising anyone, it is restricted, and it is based on need And so if we don't have registrants on a certain day, then we'll cancel that class. But they're offered all across the state. And so then in October through December, we'll talk about developing employees, growing them. How do you praise? How do you reward? And how do you encourage? All right. So just a reminder, we don't have Off the Shelf next month. And then in August, we are going to have a guest, Scott Christopher. I'm super excited because he's a funny guy. And he's going to talk about levity in the workplace and why it pays to lighten up a little bit. So thanks you guys for coming. I really appreciate you being here today. And I am so excited to see how this next little bit goes. And, you know, just I am wishing you all the best I possibly can in your quarterly evaluations and as you implement pay for performance. So have a great day today and enjoy. I gave you 6 minutes back. So enjoy your day. Have a good one.